Hi guys! So today's lesson is going to be for Thursday, May 7th. You do have a bell ringer today. Please use your notes to help you with that because I use some terms directly from the notes. So use your notes to help you. So answer the bell ringer question, and we are going to do two slides today. One is a writing slide and then the other one is a picture slide. So before we get started on that, quick reminder that your nuclear bomb safety video project that is due tomorrow, May 8th. Turn it in. You should be turning in your script or your explanation and your video. The video must be submitted as a media recording because if it's not, then I can't view it. Pay attention to the comments or your messages because I will message you if I can't see it and I'll ask you to resubmit it. Media recording, okay? Make sure that is done. So before we get started on the notes for today, let's go ahead and recap what we talked about last. We were covering television and the impact that media and, propaganda had on citizens during the Cold War. The whole push for advertisements and the birth of the commercial started during this time, and it was an easier way to get people to, buy products, but also to get your attention. So we have political leaders, using commercials or using television just to kind of reach their voters more easily. Just like FDR used the fireside chats and the radio, well, now we have political leaders using television because if you have the money, you could buy a television and you would have it in your home and you could turn on the news, whatever. There weren't all the stations that we have today, obviously, but it was an easier way to reach and contact citizens during this time. So we had television shows like I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, we have The Twilight Zone, different kinds of things that are going to say, okay, this is how life should be for people during the Cold War. This is that nuclear family. This is how you should live your life. But we also have TV shows like The Twilight Zone that are going to warn people and say, if we don't stop acting like this right now, then there might be some consequences in the future. So some were showing us, how to behave and what a good person is versus what a bad person is, and some were serving as a warning. So let's see, 29, 20, 30. Okay, 29 and slide 30. So slide 29 is called culture change. It looks like this. You have one vocab word and it's a person. His name is Jonas Salk. So culture change in society. Like I said, we are now seeing the growth of and the establishment of a nuclear family. It's not a real thing. You can't have this perfect ideal family. And I'll show you pictures today of kind of like what that looks like. The mom, dad, 2.5 kids, white picket fence, and a dog, right? Like that's not a real depiction of what family life is like in the United States and never has been, but it was a goal for people to achieve. So how is life going to change for people? Well, obviously we are living in fear of a potential nuclear war with the Soviet Union. We're in an arms race with them. We're in a space race with them. This is a very scary time for people. It's the atomic age, the age of anxiety, the Cold War era, right? So obviously people are going to be very scared. But there's a lot of other things that are going on at the same time. So let's start with the first sentence here. FDR had polio, which hindered his ability to walk throughout his life. We know this. He wasn't born with polio. He contracted polio in the 1920s. This was before he he worked in the government. He was the Secretary of the Navy during World War I under President Woodrow Wilson, only president with a PhD. He was in government before that, and then in 1920s, he started to run for governor. So he wanted to be governor of New York, and he ended up winning that. And then eventually, we know he becomes president. But he contracted polio when he was on vacation with his family. I think he was swimming in some lake or something like that, and he contracted it. Well, his type of polio, luckily, only affected his legs, which that's what it does. It starts off affecting your legs, but in some cases, it can continue to move up and you lose all motion from the shoulders down. Polio is a very scary disease. On top of that, it was contagious. So, this disease was running rampant. And I know this is a little triggering right now because we are living in a pandemic with the coronavirus being very contagious, which it is. So I guess we have something to connect it to in the 1950s with the polio epidemic, really. I mean, a pandemic crosses, it's global, with polio's epidemic just in the United States. So it was very scary. And in 1952, that was the worst year. There were more than 57,000 people who came down with polio. So this is very scary because it's killing lots of people, but also like it paralyzes you. It paralyzes you. We know FDR worked very, very hard to get range of mobility back in his legs. I mean, he couldn't walk by himself. He needed to have his braces on all the time. And he used a wheelchair a lot of the times. Usually he would just like stand and give speeches. Like no one ever really saw him walking unless he had the assistance of people next to him. But this is very scary for people during this time. I know it seems silly to talk about what like people being scared because we're living in a pandemic, and I understand that like this is a very scary time, but it's easier for me to think about the 1950s now because I'm not living in the 1950s. So I'm just reverting to history here. In the 1950s, polio was a very scary disease that was spreading rampant around the United States, and we needed to find a vaccine. So the same year, 1952, scientist Jonas Salk developed a new polio vaccine. Vaccines use a killed or weakened form of the germ to help the body fight defenses against the germ. We know what a vaccine is. Luckily, Jonas Salk, you should remember that name. He developed a vaccine for polio, and when we are born, it's one of the like automatic vaccines that you get like right when you're born. And we have eradicated a lot of diseases that formerly, like in the past, just like killed thousands of people. Like we have like measles and things, and polio for a big example. Now we don't have that anymore because we have a vaccine for it. And like once we take it away, it doesn't come back unless you have people who don't get vaccines, which that's another story, but some of those diseases are coming back because we have people who refuse to get vaccines. Anyway, Jonas Salk developed a polio vaccine, which thank goodness, oh my gosh, thank goodness, this vaccine was like pushed out to all of the United States. And my mom actually, because she was alive during this time, she, practiced the duck and cover drills in school. So she remembers watching Bert the Turtle, ducking and covering under her desk. And she got the polio vaccine in school in a sugar cube. So like nurses would go around, like imagine like sitting in the cafeteria, nurses would go around and be like, and then they would put a sugar cube on your mouth, like in your tongue, and you would eat it. That was the polio vaccine. Crazy. This is not long ago. So thank goodness we get the polio vaccine because that is scary. I'm going to show you some pictures and it's awful, terrifying. So, okay, let's continue. Threats of nuclear war and the spread of communism did cause unease for millions of Americans, but at the same time, many people took comfort in the nation's stunning economic success. We have a baby boom and we have FDR's GI Bill. So when the soldiers return back from war, they are getting some sort of pension and they can either go back to school, they can purchase a home, they can start up their life because we learned after World War I that we need to help our veterans when they return from war. So we have a baby boom, which is a generation. We've talked about this. To house the growing families, builders such as Bill and Alfred Levitt created new communities of individual homes. These are suburban areas. These are the suburban homes, like these neighborhoods. And basically, if you could just copy and paste the houses, so you build one house, copy, paste. Like they're all the same. And it's brilliant when you think about it. If you are a person designing houses or a contractor, you copy the same house and you're saving so much money because you just buy the same materials. It's brilliant. Some of you might even live in a suburb or in like a neighborhood. That's what they're doing. This is the development of suburban areas. We also have eventually down the road, this is going to take place in like the 70s too, and in the 80s, something called white flight, where all of, really, just to put it bluntly, like white people, white flight, flee the cities and live to the suburban communities, leaving just like minorities and African Americans, especially in like the cities, which is kind of like the mindset we have today. It's just kind of like engraved, especially if we're born during this time. I mean, it stinks because a lot of the times like funding and things for communities goes towards these suburban areas and not towards the cities, which is really unfortunate. New homes were filled with new stoves, refrigerators, and washing machines. These homes were affordable. A family could purchase a single-family home at a reasonable price, often financed with the help of the government. This is the GI Bill. Thanks, FDR. The nuclear family was born. New types of homes, new products, TVs, ads, pushing people to buy things and showing people how to live created a new culture for American society. TV was huge. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, TV and advertisements, they influence how we behave, right? Like I can watch something for a week and then see like start speaking like that person or saying, I really want to cut my hair like that person, right? Like it influences us a lot. And the commercials are tailored to make us want to buy something. We are a consumer society. We want to buy. We want more stuff constantly. So that's going to be big during the 1950s. People are going to be like, wow, I have money now. The economy's great. It helps if you win the war. We won the war. The economy's booming. Let's go. Let's buy a lot of stuff. And that's what's happening during the 1950s. That's what happened in the 1920s after World War I as well. However, some feared this new way of life would be just like the Twilight Zone, like, right? Like everything, there's no creativity because everyone's living in the same houses. It's a warning. Like, okay, we're losing our individuality here because we're all living in the same kind of lifestyle. So we are losing our individuality. So as people like love this stuff, there's always going to be someone else that's like, well, is this really great? Like all this stuff is coming out and people are going to question it. Like, is this going to be really helpful or not? Kind of like AI, right? Like there are some people that are like, wow, AI is going to make our life so much better. Let's go. Let's get artificial intelligence. Well, some people are like me. Some people are like, well, maybe we shouldn't do that because I really don't want a robot like taking over potentially. So maybe that's just a fear for me. But like that's something that I question. Right? Like, is that really going to be helpful for us or is that going to be hurtful for us? Okay, I want to show you some pictures. These are some of the suburban homes that our nuclear families are living in. Obviously, like, right, you just copy and paste the same house over and over and over. Copy, paste, copy, paste. This is a nuclear family right here. Mom, dad, 2.5 kids, white picket fence dog. It's just a depiction of like, hey, you should live like this. This is a typical American family, not a communist family. These are the TV shows that I was talking about. We have Leave It to Beaver, mom, dad, 2 kids, right? And it's just like, it's a clear depiction of, okay, that's how the son should act. That's how the wife should act. Get back in the house. Remember, like, during World War II, we have like Rose of the Riveters and all these women that are working, and it's such a great push for women's rights. In the 1950s, that took all of it away. So like, yeah, all these women are working during World War II and it's really great and they're doing great things for society. Well, it was like all of that was forgotten during the 1950s and it was like, all right, women, back in the home. You need to get back to work, like in the house. Those jobs are for men. You can't be taking a man's job. So it was like, oh, everyone just forgot that women like serve a purpose in society. So the 1950s kind of like deleted all of that hard work that women fought for during World War II. It doesn't mean that like we forgot about it, but society just moved on from it. And we'll see like another kind of push for that later on in like after really the Cold War, but and like towards the end of the Cold War as well. But the 1950s was a particularly hard time for women because it was like, did you guys forget? And society was like, what did you do during World War II? And they were like, yeah, you forgot. I Love Lucy is another TV show during this time that was huge that people just love to watch. It's a comedy. It's really funny. There's also this game right here, Candyland. I would hope some of you have played Candyland before or know what Candyland is. Actually, someone shared this with me, which is pretty cool. It was created by a teacher who had polio, and she was in a polio ward, and she decided to, while she was in this ward, getting treatment for polio the best that she could, she created this game for some of the kids to play because they had polio as well, and so they had something to do while they were sick. So there's that. If you have polio and it affects you all the way down, shoulders down, you can't breathe. So everything is paralyzed from the shoulders down. So you would be put in something called the iron lung, and this machine breathes for you. The only thing out, obviously, is just your head, and you spend 24 hours in this thing because you can't breathe. So this machine breathes for you. This is what it looks like. This is brutal. I want to show you like a polio ward. Oh my God, look how many iron lungs there are. Like, people are in those. Those machines are breathing for you. You can't do anything, but you're paralyzed. You can't breathe. You stay in those things. Look how sad this is. Look at that. With the mirror so they can see. This is polio, and thank God we have a vaccine for it. Iron lungs, absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Write your summaries. Don't forget the vocab word. See you guys. Turn in your projects.